Well, hello. We are starting to make some sessions on Delft3D. We're starting from scratch. Uh, Delft3D is a code to solve hydraulic problems. What we're covering is Delft3D flow, of course. If you open the window, it's kind of looks like this. That's the GUI. It's called the Graphical User Interface. It is developed by the Delft3D Academy in the Netherlands. If you need a version of the code, you have to register on their website and ask for the code, and they will give it to you for free if you're from a university. The first step is to select a working directory. That's where my mouse is. So, for example, there is this folder called test on my desktop, which I could just select that as my working directory. So this is the primary directory that I'll be working at. And then you have to generate a grid for the domain you want to solve problems and you want to simulate. So you just click on grid, and then there is this tool called RGF grid, which is the grid generation tool. When you open that and wait for a while, a window is gonna pop out. The first step in the RGF grid is to go on these tabs, click on the coordinate system and select your coordinate system. Either it's Cartesian, which is the default, or it's spherical. I'm using spherical coordinates, so I have to switch to spherical coordinates here. The second step is to import your bathymetry and generate your grid on it, of course. So you click on File, and then you go to Attribute Files, you click on Open Samples, and then what you have to do is to go and find your bathymetry, which is, in this case that I'm working on, is all these. So for example here, but this is not enough, so I have to open another sample, which is here, and I have to open them all. So alright, now I have my bathymetry, and if I want to view it, I could grab this magnifier and draw some area on this. And as you see, this is the bathymetry of the Pontchartrain estuary. It's located at the north of New Orleans, Louisiana. So if I want to have a grid on that and cover the whole area, or the areas that I'm interested in, I have to start. And in order to start, I have to select this tool here, this tab. It's called Draw a New Spline. So I grab this, and let's get started. So I have to pick some splines depending on how I want my curvilinearity to be. So let's say I start on here, and that's one spline. So when I'm finished with this spline, I just right click, so this spline is now done, and then I started by left clicking again, and I draw another one. And let's say here's my second spline, and then right click, and then with left clicking I draw another spline, and then right click, and then I draw another spline here. So these are my 4 splines. So this is the area, for example, I want to fit a grid in. Of course, I have a bigger area, but just as a tutorial, you have to click here on the top where my mouse is. It says change splines into grid, and by clicking into that and waiting for a while, you'll see this grid over here. So, and right now you could actually get rid of the splines by well, you could not view them, so you could go to view and then splines and then click on no splines. So here's how my grid is gonna look like initially. This is not really good. I need some refinements, I need some other stuff. So I go to setting and go to general, and then there are some factors. It's called M refinement factor and N refinement factor. One is east-west, the other is north-south. So let's say I change one to 2. It was 3 and 3, that's why you have 3 cells north-south and 3 cells east-west. And then I click OK. I could do refinements. For example, I could click on operations and click on refine grid. Here's another grid, and then again operations, refine grid, and here's another one. It's not gonna look really good, so I have to improve it by going to change my refinement factors. So let's say I change it by 2 and 2 or 3 and 2, and then again I refine it again. As you see, it's getting a little better, but it has some stuff that need to be fixed. For example, this area here on Lake Morpa is not covered by any grid at all, but you can actually cover that. I didn't pick a really good spline, but well, you can do it. So again, refine grid and refine grid. So this is some sort of the grid that I have for this tutorial. Of course, it's not perfect, it's not covering some of the areas, but by picking splines in a better way, you could have a better grid. This is just a tutorial. Anyway, if in some dry points you don't want grid cells, you could easily come here. Of course, it's kind of too refined now, but by selecting this tool, delete a grid point, you could delete some of your grid points. So these are areas that are always, for example, let's say they're always dry, so you don't need them, so you just click on them and you'll get rid of them. As you see, well, I'm doing this right now. I advise you to do the same thing while your grid is not too much refined, because you have to do less stuff. And if you need a grid point in some area that you don't have a grid point, you just click this tool called insert a grid point, and then you come to the area that you want grid points, and then you just select them and you just add them. And as you see, for example, I come into here and oops, I don't know actually what happened, but something really went crazy. I have to, okay, yeah, I zoomed a lot, but if I select this tool and I insert a grid point, you see I click on the previous one and you will be having grid points. So I am actually covering all the areas that were not covered. So of course, if I had better splines, it would be better, but as you see, it is doing a kind of a good job. And I added some more cells. I could add more to cover the whole lake. But to save time, I'm not going to do that here. Actually, in my general grid, I have done that. And once you are done with your grid and everything looks fine to you, of course this doesn't look fine to me, I don't like it the way it is, you have to go to operations and click on orthogonalize grid. And what it does is that it uses a tool to make sure that the angles are mostly 90 degrees. Otherwise it will fail the simulation. Once you're done with the grid and you are okay to use it, you could actually export it. And I talked about refinement, and you could also define the grid by the same factor that you were refining it. So if you click and you define it, let's say I define the grid, and then right now it's defined, and now I could come to the areas I don't want and then delete the grid points. So once you are done with your grid and everything is fine and your grid looks fine, you have to go to File and then click on Export and then export your grid. It's gonna ask you to give it a name. The extension is .grd, so I'm just gonna name it as testgrid.grd, and when I click on save, it actually is going to save. So this is how you generate a grid on Delft3D. I hope this information is helpful. I will be covering more stuff in the next videos.